you're not going to have to make any interest or principal payment for the near term, say the next 3 months, we'll see what happens from there. We're working closely with our partners in the Connecticut banking community, see if they can access the loans they have outstanding. So there's, again, loan forbearance, making it easier for those small businesses that maybe are getting impacted to be able to power through this, next 90 days. We're working with the Small Business Administration, and the Small Business Administration is making millions of dollars available across the country. We'll be able to make very small, low interest loans for small businesses. We're going to get information.
I'm just saying. No, I didn't know if I had to do it because it was a special meeting.
Everything we can. Get hourly employees, we're taking care of them. For small businesses,
Here's Francis.
Okay.
So I'm gonna unhook from this.
Until we see what's on the other side of this virus.
I keep 6 feet away.
So I'm gonna officially call the meeting to order. I don't.
I mean, it's just an announcement.
Well, it's important for what's going on.
I have staff that are back at PD monitoring that too,
Monitoring
so
it.
they're on the call right now.
All right. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order.
So we need to,
I'm gonna wait for I am gonna wait for Robert to come back, but I wanted to call the meeting to order. Okay. So this meeting is a special meeting because there's some things that's going on, and I did ask the chief to be here so that the chief can give us all an update. I know that there's emails flying and information coming in fast, hot and heavy, and I just thought it was really important for us to get a handle on what's going on. And then there's some things that we need to discuss and take some possible action. Chief.
so I guess most of you are here listening to the phone call. The only update that I really have right now is that well, let me start from locally. The Emergency Operations Center for Bloomfield is partially activated, as are the 11 surrounding communities that surround Bloomfield. We are participating with the state EOC on what is called Web EOC. It's a interactive portal that we can request services or any equipment or goods or personal protective equipment that we need. We've been interacting with them since Friday. The only thing we've requested is additional masks for if we come into contact with someone who has presents themselves with symptoms. We've briefed all our first responders, and they are up to speed on what their duties and responsibilities are. As you heard the representative from the Department of Health say earlier, those of you here who were here, we're up to 40 positive cases in the state. That's doubling every couple of days. It was 26 as of yesterday, so it's going up.
41.
Yeah. So we do have, I don't know the exact numbers, we had at least 3 cases in the Hartford area. We do expect those numbers, according to the health department this morning, to go up, and to go up rather quickly. The governor stated this morning on the news that he was going to join the governors of New York and New Jersey in imposing a moratorium on groups of greater than 50. We have been waiting through the day. He reiterated that in the conference call. We've been waiting throughout the day to get the executive order on that so that we can put that into effect. And we continue to monitor the situation that we have. All the personal protective messages are the same. The message on our Bloomfield webpage and on social media is up to speed with our surrounding communities. In fact, many of the communities we're a step ahead of. We're staying pretty lockstep with the town of West Hartford because we share a health district. So the message that we're getting from Amy Kraus is the same, and we're sharing that immediately with Abby from the town manager's office to post those things on our webpage and on social media. We've been working on internal communications to our employees through human resources, so we can tell them about their benefits and what they are entitled to. Today at 1 o'clock, we had a meeting with our department heads to discuss what our next steps would be following this meeting. And I think that's what we're going to discuss, as many of the surrounding communities, town hall and offices have closed to visitation from the community. Many, in calling them, their offices are open and their employees are there, but they're not allowing the community in, and they're enacting measures to limit personal contact. So what I directed with each department head today was to review their department mechanisms that they had, that they could implement to create an adequate space between employees and to provide those limited services that they can to the public. And because I can't, as the emergency operations director, I can't just impose something on them. I don't know what each of them do. They all have a particular expertise. I'm going to review those. I've already gotten one from the town clerk today, and we'll put those into effect as we get them from each department head. That includes the library, social services, senior services, which you may have seen from looking at the town webpage. They already imposed some limitations on that as of Friday. They did run those by me. I thought that they were sufficient, and we're going to continue to curb some of those as the days go by. Yes, sir.
Is the library open?
The library, I do not believe, is open to the
No,
public.
that's fine, because I
I believe they're doing curbside pickup. They're doing a lot through the internet. They're trying to, and
That's fine, I just hadn't seen the official announcement, and
it's on
someone,
the webpage.
it's on the webpage,
Yes.
but we didn't
Yeah.
send one out saying that it was, that's fine, which is fine, which is fine.
It's on the website.
It's on
and
the
I believe
website.
the library sent theirs out to their people. I know it's on Facebook,
Yeah.
so people know.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, it should go out at-
The one, Human Services went out, I know, and.
Yeah, everything that goes out on the, I'm told, everything that goes out on the town webpage will go out on the town's social media sites and VATV.
And I think that, like, for human services, they email those to their email listserv, their distribution list. So if the library has a distribution list, they send those out to the distribution list as well.
Have you seen it?
So
I'm on that, and I haven't seen it, that's why I'm asking.
So what I told the policy meeting on Friday, and I'll reiterate to the group here today, is we have an emergency operations plan. The problem with our plan at the onset, and all communities, is this is an atypical type of emergency. It's not a natural disaster, snowstorm, an airplane crash, something like that, that we can marshal resources and additional resources to create a perimeter and seal that area off and address it and let life go on as usual. It's the exact opposite. It's trying to impact everyday life to not go on as usual. So everybody is a little bit out of their comfort zone on how we do this. So we are exchanging information with our surrounding communities so that we can determine a best practice. We're following in lockstep with the Department of Health, the Bloomfield Health District's response to pandemic plan, but frankly, that is a response on how to contain the spread, and once it's out, how to mitigate those things. It doesn't give you a step-by-step process or procedure on how to do things. It just gives you a framework on what you're trying to do. The overarching goal right now, and was reiterated by the health department this morning, is that we are trying to mitigate the spread and the rate of infection as best we can, so that we can attempt as best we can to not overrun the healthcare facilities. The concept of not or of stopping the spread of infection amongst our community is over. That it's here. It's in our community. You can count that people in your community that you're dealing with have it. It's just trying to limit that exposure to a slower rate over a longer period of time, and not have it spike within the next week or 2 or 3 weeks and overrun the hospitals in the area. You'd rather have a lower number of patients coming in on a regular basis than a high number all at once. And that is our policy right now, that's our conceptual model that we're working from.
So, once again, I wanted to make sure that the chief was able to give us some concise information based on all the emails that were flying. The CDC has also given their, recommendation. They're with the 50 people. They're looking more towards 8 weeks, I think is what their recommendation has said. The governor earlier, wants to, strongly encourage houses of worship to fall in line with the 50 or less gatherings. That might be a little bit difficult, because what he says is strongly encouraged. He hasn't said definitely, just like how we're gonna close restaurants, we're gonna close churches. So he hasn't said that. So we have to, appeal to their sense of wisdom, as we encourage them to go to 50 or less. As you know, restaurants, as you heard, will be closed tonight. Stop and Shop and Geisler's have special hours that they have imposed upon themselves, to make sure that we can restock. So, one of the things that we need to do, which other towns have already done, is to declare a, health emergency. And we need to be able to give the town manager, the ability to do that, the authority to do that. So, at this particular time, if, I can have a recommendation or a motion to give the town manager the authority to declare a, public health emergency for our local area, that would be great. Is there a motion on the floor? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I just have a question for the chief.
Yes, sir.
In regards to the companies within Bloomfield, who is communicating with them locally? The health district is?
The health district is communicating with local bars, restaurants, and those establishments.
What about Cigna?
With businesses, we're using social media to do that, and the Connecticut portal to do that. We don't have direct lines of communication with them.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, the CEOs
That seems like a gap. I mean, this process here is perfect because we could identify gaps going forward.
Mhm.
But I would think that when it comes to major companies within the town, that you have employees going in and out, using facilities and stuff within the town of Bloomfield, you may find that we're communicating with them in something like this. So that's probably something that we should look into.
We can certainly look
Yeah.
into that,
I
absolutely.
think Jose would be able to have those contacts, or the Chamber of Commerce or something like that would be able to plug in or send them a message and they can send out to
Right,
everybody
to
else.
everyone else within,
Even the smaller businesses,
I think the major ones.
family owned, under
I think that we can certainly improve that communication. There's a lot of room for improvement in that communication. I'm not concerned that that message isn't reaching them. That message is pretty consistent across all news outlets. The message is being delivered out there very consistently. And that's what we have been trying to do locally here in Bloomfield and with our neighboring communities, is not to be an outlier, not to have a different strategy or a different message, but to keep that consistent across the board. Because, as I said on Friday, the only thing that spreads faster than the virus is anxiety. And misinformation or different information just creates that.
I'll give you an example. I know that Sherry Cantor, the mayor in West Hartford, she had an article in the Current, I think it was. So I'm just looking at what are we doing in that case to have something out there in local papers or the Current.
So I did send something to the chief today, for them to look it over. I believe the chief and Mark.
Yep, and I believe Mark commented on that.
Right, so I believe that we will get something on the website, we'll get something in Messenger. So once that is approved, because once again, we want to make sure that the message is consistent, and it's also because our borders are so close. People cross over from Hartford, West Hartford, Windsor. So one of the things, are we finished discussion?
No.
Okay, so one of the things that was important was we were on a phone call on yesterday with Mayor Luke Ronan and the other mayors and first selectmen. And that was one of the messages that we wanted to make sure that we were all saying the same thing, because then it gives that message a little bit more power and credibility. So once we're finished here tonight and we vet that, article or whatever it is, we'll get it to all the places that it needs to go. So something will be coming out. I'm gonna go with, David and then Kevin and then Francis.
State of emergency certainly has severe implications. Some of the towns are talking curfews. Now, that gets into a whole other league, enforcement-wise, and it could be a whole other pack of problems. I don't know if we're prepared to go that far. So far in the meetings, we haven't discussed that. And I'm not sure, I don't know if we want to engage in something like that. We have close, put border guards up and stop people. And
Yeah, no, and
how far do we want to take this at this point? Do you have any thoughts on that?
well, like I said on Friday, enacting the emergency operations plan in a state of emergency does vest a lot of power in the emergency operations director. And I realize that. But I certainly have never and don't intend on ever acting in a vacuum there. But we brought together a unified command with a policy group to talk about all these decisions ahead of when they're made. And my theory has been, as I just said, to stay consistent with our surrounding communities, because as the mayor said, those borders are very porous. You want a consistent message. And I think that West Hartford and Bloomfield are all staying pretty consistent with the governor's message. So if the governor limits it at 50, we should be consistent with that. I don't think that we should drop it to 10 and say we're going to be extra different. We're not going to make much difference there. We want to stay consistent across the
I
board.
absolutely agree to that, but
Yeah.
I'm just throwing up the other issue that's been talked about there, is curfews.
I think,
Right.
That's monster.
I think for the
Get into
fact
that.
that we're
Yeah.
closing down our restaurants and our bars,
I
whatever,
think
I think that's going to help.
Yeah, the movie
curtail.
theater and gyms and bars and restaurants, that alone does a lot to curb the curfews. Now, if you have people out after dark walking in the neighborhood and stuff, you want that, right? You want
Yeah.
that sense of community out there and being outside and
I guess that
live.
goes to the definition of curfew.
Well, it's not a weekend event. This is not gonna be over next Sunday. This is gonna go for 8 weeks. People have to be able to get out and move about, go to the grocery store, things like that. We're already making a significant impact on everyone's life. So I don't think that will be necessary.
I hope not.
But I think that there may be situations that come up over the next week or 2 weeks where we say, listen, we need to make a collective decision on this particular instance and either take some enforcement action or limit something because someone is deviating from the norm.
But once again, after tonight at 8 o'clock, after 8 o'clock happens, every gym is locked for the foreseeable future. Every restaurant is locked for the foreseeable
Well,
future.
they're not locked. They can do
I mean
takeout.
takeout.
Yeah.
But
So
I
for
mean,
instance, I went to Isaac's today and I had lunch, but I took it to go to my office. But I asked him, I said, what are you gonna do? And he said, I'm gonna be here, people depend on me. And I'm gonna put all my tables in the back and we're gonna create an area that a few people can come in at a time, they can pick it up and they can go. And I
Right.
said, that's good.
right, but I think the gathering, the gathering of people, because that won't be happening, I think you will see some
Yes.
distinct changes in the amount of people that
The
you see
places
in
that
and
you'll
around
see a
town.
congregation of people will be the drugstores and the grocery stores.
Right.
Grocery stores in particular.
And they
And I
can
don't
say
know
it's
that you
locked
can
in.
really prevent that.
Well, you don't want it.
Right.
I just want to add something to that. I mean,
Oh.
no, I just want to add to
Go
the
ahead, go ahead.
conversation that's going on. I mean, I think we shouldn't give any false sense that, oh, we're not going to have martial law or whatever the case is. Because if you look in Wuhan, China, for example, that's a city of 11 million. And they pretty much, when the outbreak and it spread, they locked down the entire city. Italy's the same thing. Everyone was told to stay inside, don't come out. So I'm just saying, I hope we don't get to that point, but it's not far-fetched if this.
Well, and because of the widespread nature of our community, we don't have the resources to lock down, I don't have the resources to lock
What
down
would that mean?
Bloomfield. You know, we can put out an advisory and say, listen, you need to stay in,
Well,
you need.
people are listening. I
But,
mean, that's what
and they
you're
can
talking
listen to that, but we can't physically
Correct,
close
yeah,
the
yeah,
borders, I
yeah.
can't do that.
about. I'm not talking about that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about-
Kevin?
Yeah, so I think you answered one of my questions.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's the question and basically a comment. But you said you talked about restaurants and bars, but I think the movie theater and the gyms and all those things are included. So those are the things we are gonna be sort of, yeah, right.
We're even enacting rules at the police department that if you need to report a minor crime, we're putting it on the webpage that you can call in.
Sure.
We're setting up officers at desks that they can take those over the phone. Records is not gonna be doing any in-person business, we're just gonna do things over the phone, the internet, unless they're needed for reports. They can get accident reports online, they can download them that way, so. And when officers go to someone's home, we've posted it on our social media page that they're gonna maintain a distance, and in some cases, they're gonna knock on the door and ask you to come outside. And don't be insulted if you're 8 feet away from them, but we're only gonna interact in those cases that we absolutely have to.
So my other thing though was back to David's question of what, like, I mean, I think that we definitely want to enact, the emergency, or whatever we're calling,
State of
declaration
emergency.
of health and civil emergency. But sort of, what are the limits of that to Rickford's point about martial law? I mean, I don't think we have the ability to do that in a town. That's a governor, federal, I don't know why. I mean, but I agree, it may come to that, but it's not,
I
that's not
can't tell you
something-
that it won't come to that.
No, but
I
it's
don't
not
think it
something-
will, but I would, a week ago, I wouldn't have, I would have told you that it's crazy that we're gonna close down bars and restaurants.
No, I know, I agree, but again, that kind of decision is not gonna be made at the town level. So I guess I just would like maybe a little, to the degree that we can have a little clarity about what this would entail, because I think it's important that the manager has the ability, the manager and you have the ability to do all this. To David's point, I think one of the towns I read about curfew was West Hartford, right?
That was New Britain.
Or maybe it's New Britain. But whatever. I mean, to the degree, let's just say West Hartford does that, and your whole comment about sort of in lockstep and trying to keep it together. I mean, what are the limits of this? I mean, what? And I realize you're not gonna take.
I can't tell you what the limits are.
Okay.
I don't know what limitations there are from the governor's office, but,
Robert,
Yes, ma'am.
do you have, that chart? Do you have the flow chart for the incident command?
I don't have those present, but I can certainly send those out.
But I can get that. I could offer some thoughts about the state of emergency. That's something I've talked to Mark about. The governor's declaration of a state of emergency and his executive orders are specific to certain things that the governor's office considers statewide as something that needs attention. If you here at the town as a council determine that there's something specific here with your town that requires attention that isn't within the confines of what the governor has put out there, if you have declared a local emergency, you as a council can say, I want us to deal with this issue in our town this way. It also opens the door to, I think, a certain class of claims for you to be able to ask for additional monies back, especially since the Fed has declared an emergency now. So it opens the door to us recording the costs of all of these activities and then asking for funding. The last thing that it does is, in concert with the regional emergency, I think it's response plan, there's a regional network of communities that all belong to the same planning hierarchy, and they share resources. It's a lot like mutual aid. And it connects us to those as well as the state so that we can reach out for additional material. So it opens a lot, and the civil preparedness thing actually opens the door to you having access to, I believe, state forces that are connected to National Guard if you need it. So it gives you a lot of flexibility.
There's really no downside to it, once again, because we share the district, we share the borders. It's extremely important because we wanna make sure that we're getting the same service here. So I think in giving giving permission or giving authority helps us, to make sure that the chief can do his job as incident commander, that the health district continues to give us the same level of response that we should have, and in the event that we get to claim, whether it's overtime, whether it's supplies, however that is gonna be, when hopefully that pot of money opens up, we'll be able to make that, we'll be able to make that claim. I'm gonna let Patrick go because he hasn't said, let me let
I think
Francis go because you were in the queue,
He was
and
first.
then let Patrick go because he hasn't said anything yet.
I'm just going way back to Rickford's point about communication. For me personally today, it was a little bit, I thought I was clear on it, and then all of a sudden I got a text message from somebody that had a screenshot from one of the news stations that says, governor closes all businesses at 8 o'clock tonight. And I'm like, okay, does that mean I'm shut down? So then I'm trying to go through and as far as I can tell, no, it's just restaurants, bars, everything.
Matter of fact, I think he's trying to get some SBA funds to help small businesses throughout
Right.
this time.
Close them for the evening, you close them for the night.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
no, I mean,
it's
it was,
just-
they were supposed to shut.
Just restaurants and bars, and that communication is
Right.
being made by the health district.
But when it was on Channel 3's website, it said, governor shuts down all businesses as of 8 o'clock tonight. So it was, that's just, again, importance to me, communication, that's all.
That was it?
That was it.
Patrick?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to go back to the motion and declaring the health emergency, giving the town manager authority. I think Robert answered some of that, but does that authority include the ability to spend funds or without coming back to council? What does that include, giving the town manager authority to do what?
So based on our charter, for any additional funds or appropriation of money, you have to come back and get the council
Okay.
approval. So why I asked about and I didn't think about it before, is I wanted for everyone to see what that organizational chart looks like. There is still a policy group, and the policy group is the deputy mayor, myself, the chief, the town manager,
Amy, myself, and Lieutenant Dunn.
Okay, so that policy group will try to make decisions, like high-level decisions. But what we will try to do, just like how we called this emergency meeting tonight, if we can't get an emergency meeting, David and I will probably split up. Someone will take the Republicans, someone will take the Democrats, get a straw poll. I think I had called you yesterday just in case, to make sure that whatever directives we're giving is on, is the consensus of the council. So but beyond policy level, someone has to be in charge of making sure that the town is safe. And that's the incident commanders, and some of the decisions that need to be made, hopefully we can discuss them now so that the town manager will be able to do what he needs to do as far as, are we gonna limit hours, how we're gonna do things like that. The town manager will have to be able to direct his staff, in a way that's beneficial for everybody. So I think that's what it is. You still have the policy group that's still gonna be making the policies.
Okay. So it's
for the
more
town.
around town offices and staff.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
And because we're bordering 5 towns, we already have been made clear that Hartford and Bloomfield and possibly Windsor, West Hartford, has Granby been notified to be included in this same
So
communication?
what has,
Granby and
East Granby.
East Granby
So what has happened
and
is,
Simsbury.
on that call yesterday with Mayor Bronin, these people were on the call. Mayor Bronin had a draft of the declaration that he wanted all of us to sign on to. I think probably the only one that was ready to sign on right away was Marcia LeClaire from East Hartford. everyone else said that they needed to dial it back a little bit. We were interested in what he had to say, but we needed to connect with our people. But now that the governor has said what he said as far as the 50, we're all in agreement with that. I think the only thing that we're probably a little shaky on is the houses of worship. And I have spoken to the chief, and both the chief and I are a little concerned that you can't go in there and say you must. If the governor says you must, then we have to go down that route.
But I think the churches is just like any institution. I mean, we're talking about various corporations within the town. Case in point, there was a meeting tonight at the First Cathedral, and they canceled it. So they have their contingency plans in place, and they're following those guidelines.
And
So-
most houses of worship have curtailed their weekly meetings, which is fine, right? But the larger gathering is on a Sunday. The archdiocese, huh?
A lot of them are going to video.
Some of them are, but some of them are still having their services. The archdiocese had canceled services
Yeah, we got an
until,
email from the guy at the church.
right, until I
said,
think April
yeah.
something or other.
Mhm.
So we're hoping that the more people hear and see is the fact that wisdom will begin. So at this time, yeah.
Oh, no, going back to, Francis, and maybe we're gonna talk about.
Patrick?
Or Patrick, yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
No
All
worries.
all us Republicans. will
Yeah, I
vote.
know. It's those mega hats. No, the thing about financial matters, I mean, I think what they did in West Hartford is they authorized the town manager to spend up to $100,000.
Right, I was thinking like the town manager's contingency fund, maybe we should just say, you know,
I mean,
Up to you to
We
use
have-
that.
yeah,
And I don't know, I mean, that may just be part of the next discussion. I just think-
right,
the
right.
charter
Right,
does
so
have
the
section
The charter
309.
does talk about that, and I would wanna stick with the charter. Once again, I think between David and myself, if there's an issue where it comes to finances, we can get an answer pretty quickly.
Okay, that's
And
fine.
be able, and that's why the policy group is a part of that whole structure, so I think we're gonna be good on that.
I think what we need to do, for instance, let's say you had to vote on something and we can't meet, I think there should be something set up where it's a conference call.
We are working on
Okay,
that,
okay,
yeah.
something like that.
We're working on that, but even in the absence of that, I think it's enough of us, David take, I take, we get a consensus and we move.
And I think that's fine, and I know what the charter says, but I don't know what West Hartford's charter says, and I'm just saying, it appears that what they did was they pre-authorized, as part of their doing this.
Oh, we could do the same thing.
Right,
Yeah.
so
We
that's
can
all,
do the
that's
same
all,
thing, yeah.
that's all I was, and I'm not,
It says it has to be 1.5% of the total
Right,
budget.
so can we vote
That's the
on
limit.
giving,
yeah.
can we vote on giving, can we vote on
I
the
understand, that's the
declaration?
next topic.
Yeah, let's vote on the declaration. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's carries unanimously, so we're good. Considering
Can I
take,
make a comment?
oh, yeah,
Please? The letter that you and Mark had looked at, I think is fine.
Yes.
I think, however, it would be useful if we state in there that what the clauses are that we're looking for. So
Yes.
if it's going out to the public, we just state an emergency and they say, that doesn't necessarily tell them a whole lot, it's upstairs. If we tell them exactly what we're looking for and ask for their indulgence and support, I
okay.
think that would be the
Consistent
same
with
letter.
the governor.
So we're gonna massage that, right, Chief?
Okay.
I didn't want to regret. Okay, so another, consider taking possible action concerning temporary financial matters. I think, some of the financial matters that we have to look at is, if we close, making sure that our people get paid. I think that's one of the situations, but I think the town manager will be able to make that decision. Kevin is looking a little bewildered. Some towns, if they close, some towns are paying their employees. Some towns are saying that their employees have to use time, sick time, vacation time, personal time, whatever time they have. I know that, the town manager is going to, he's gonna verbalize
If it's okay for me to jump in, we do have policy on the books that addresses this, and we'd like to remain consistent with the current policy that we have.
And that policy is,
We currently provide the ability for employees to use their accrued leave.
okay.
If if they are out sick, they can use their sick leave.
Mhm.
I believe if they're caring for a sick family member, they can do that too. I believe we also can provide assistance to them to allow them to use their vacation leave if they run.
So my question to you is, if we do close, or when we do close, how are you gonna handle that? Because
sure.
I'm not the one taking, so I'm not the one taking time off. If we get to a point where the town hall is closed,
Mhm.
how are we gonna handle that?
Hey, can I add
Closed
two
to the
cents to
public
that?
or closed period?
Closed period.
Right, can I add to, and I know you're thinking about it, but I know the state is a different bear, but when the governor shuts down for snow days, it's not taking away from our time. There's a particular coding that we have. So is there a particular coding that the towns have for emergencies such as light snow days? I know we're in a different realm of, and this is long-term.
There isn't. To my
So,
knowledge.
We were on the phone with our labor attorney this afternoon, and after, 45 minutes of discussion and looking at the different alternatives, the best solution for the town at the moment is to hold to the policies that we have on the books, which would mean that if you had a family member that was suspected of being infected, but you didn't know and you stayed home, that would not be paid for by the town. So there's limitations on what we're able to offer. And because we have such a short staff, if we were more proactive, we wouldn't have anybody working.
Right, can I chime in for a second? I was on a call today with John Larson. I guess he had a conference call. The federal government did pass, actually, I don't know if they passed it, I know it passed the House, but they are providing funding. This is something different. I mean, if someone is out of work, I don't think it'd have to come out of their vacation pay or anything, any of that. I think the federal government provided each state that's affected by this, and I guess based on each state, they'll kind of, and that's the reason why you kind of have to keep track of all of this. So whatever that funding is, the states are funded. I don't think, even the private sector, if someone, is employed, part-time, or whatever the case is, there is something in place for them to be funded. So I don't think people have to use their vacation time.
Well,
That's different than,
We had the discussion with Bill, and he's familiar with what other towns in our area are doing. And his recommendation was to hold fast with our policy because it was consistent with those towns. Now, I'll get a report from Cindy, and I'll get confirmation from Bill to bring to council to show you what we're doing so that you can understand why I think legal counsel is recommending what they're recommending.
I think this discussion, the fact that the town is doing what you're doing with respect to the using up sick leave or leave first, gives us control over the numbers, so we know if there's a federal reimbursement, we get it. If it's all over the place, it'll be hard to track. I think that's sounds like, to me, it makes sense. The thing that shook me a little bit is if somebody stays home because somebody has a virus or has been diagnosed and they don't come out. I think it sounded like they could come into work. You want them to stay home.
The advisement from the health district last week, and I don't know if that's changed, but was if there was someone in your home that was in voluntary quarantine, another family member would still report to work. Now, that was the advisement last week. It may have changed. Cindy and I have.
Chief,
The advisement, as the town manager said, if you have had direct contact with somebody who is a confirmed case of COVID-19, you're asked to self-quarantine for 14 days. If you have contact with a person who's had contact with somebody, you're considered a secondary contact, there's no limitation on you. So in other words, your spouse comes home and she had contact with somebody at work who has the virus. You don't have to stay home as well, you can go to work until she shows symptoms, and then you're asked to self-quarantine for 14 days. I know it can sound a little bit confusing.
Yeah.
I do understand that.
So no, this is a very interesting conversation, and it also sort of ties back to all those labor contracts we've been looking at. But I mean, in terms of timing on all this, and I know this situation can change overnight, but I think currently now, the biggest thing we're looking at is closing town hall to outside people coming in, right? We're not actually looking at closing.
Not right now.
Right, not right now. So I guess my thing is, what I really would like to see, or what, you know, to make any kind of ultimate decision on this, per your recommendation, I'd like to see sort of all of this written down and what the labor contracts say and where we are in terms of these advisements, which, you know, given it's a very volatile situation, I mean, I don't want to get too far into discussing where we would go with any of this, because, I mean, unless we're prepared, unless we think this is gonna happen now, you know, we
So-
walk out of here, we're closing the building, we're laying off all the employees, or, you know, or quote, laying them off.
I mean,
I don't think we're gonna do that, but one of the things that was very interesting, and I think, was it this morning that Amy was comparing us to Italy, right? Was it this morning?
Well, she's comparing us to Italy with the escalation in the rate of virus transfer.
So if we're looking that Italy might be our model, in a couple of days, a couple of weeks, we're gonna definitely be in a different place than we are now.
Oh, definitely.
And one of the
Yeah.
things that we do need to do is start looking at those contingency
Yeah.
plans. So if we need to get information so that we can make decisions in case of, so that we can plug and play if something happens, I think that's what we need to do.
Well, to Rickford and David's point, both, I think part of that also entails making sure that whatever decision we make is documented in such a way that should there be federal funds
Right.
or state funds or whatever available,
Right.
we can track it and say, yeah, we're, you know,
Give
I
us
mean,
this money back.
I remember we had that with the Halloween store.
Give it
You know, we had
back.
that
Yeah.
with the Halloween
Yes.
store.
Yes.
in terms
Right.
of-
Yes, yeah.
Right, and
Only
Carrie's
took
put
5
that
years.
coding number up. Carrie shared that coding number with us all already, so those things should be documented by department heads
So-
at this point. And
I can get correspondence to you about our personnel policy and how we're handling leave. And something from our labor attorney that says, at the moment, the current standing policy is the policy that we need to observe. And I get it, there are places that may be paying people to stay at home. I don't know that, that's something that the town of Bloomfield has engaged yet for this.
David says we can't afford that.
No, but
No,
I think we're confusing things. I mean, if we, the town, decided to close the town hall because we have to, because the governor puts out an order that everyone has to shut down, those employees need to be paid.
Yeah,
It means
that's
it's like,
different.
yeah,
That's
so
I think they would be paid for a period of time until the council instructed the manager to either go through a furlough or go through a reduction in force, or,
I think we're just following the state. I think that's the part we're missing. I think the state is gonna set whatever mandate for the towns to follow.
It could be.
Right,
we
so
won't know
once,
until
I mean,
once
that's
the
what's been
state,
going on.
right, once the state does that, I think it kind of takes the,
Yeah, because the
State may, the state may
Right.
mandate all of that.
so,
Right,
and
exactly.
if they do, then we're just gonna have to figure it out,
Yeah.
right? So, David had said that we could probably, give the town manager, some kind of, approval to spend for his town, his contingency. I don't know what's left in that contingency.
It's
Nothing.
only $50,000, but I think there's only about $20,000 left in there.
Oh, that's,
Well, how much is in the council contingency?
I'd have to look, but it's $250 normally, but you have spent about $100,000, I believe, out of that contingency.
This year?
So, Stephanie has a question.
Okay, so what potentially would be the needs to have to spend monies?
the clause in the charter says, to prevent the breakdown of an essential service rendered by a department, board, commission, or agency. So this would be like police, or, I don't know that senior services would be seen as an essential service. Some of the public works services would be in order to ensure that people can move about. But it would be the essential services. And I think, you know, I don't know that this is something that is really that difficult. I mean, if you guys are comfortable with the policy group having command of, I think you've got about $170,000 available, having that kind of sum at the policy group's beck and call, that wouldn't kill your budget. It's been budgeted for this year.
So where's that money available?
In the contingencies between the 150 with council and the 20 in the.
Do you know that for sure?
I don't, I
Okay.
can get that information.
So can I just suggest that we get that information? I don't think it's at a critical point yet. I think we can get that information, so we're just gonna, table this, and then the policy group, once again, if something happens, we'll reach out to council, we'll get a decision and get it back to you guys.
Who was the policy?
So the policy group is the deputy mayor, the town manager, the incident command, people, the chief, the director of health, Officer Benvenuto, our emergency management coordinator, and, is that it? Yes,
I think,
that's the policy group.
And who? The mayor, deputy mayor, and
I think you need to have a
No
minority,
minority party.
I think you do have to have a minority.
So I don't believe that you do have to have minority participation on this, but, so I know that this also went through the town attorney. So because of the way the structure is, I don't believe that that we had to have minority participation, but if it's something that we wanna discuss and look at, can we just get through the agenda? And I say that because there's supposed to be a conference call at 6:30. So, the next thing on the agenda is consider and take possible action concerning town budget meetings, scheduling and town meetings. Right. So I know that we have budget meetings. There's one tomorrow, there's one on Thursday. And I know that we have concerns about, large gatherings. I also believe that this situation will get worse the longer it goes out. So if we can get some things done in the meantime and in between time until things get worse, I think that might be a better idea. What I have said to the town manager is probably spread out the number of people in here doing presentations. So it would just be the council and whatever group that's doing a presentation, that'd be it. And if we had 2 presentations in one night, probably just make it 1 presentation per night. So it's curtailing the amount of people that's in the room. Probably doing it up here is probably a little bit better than doing it in council chambers because you can be a little bit more spread out. So that's what I've discussed with the town manager. Now we can open it up for discussion.
I think that makes sense. I don't see how we can put off to 8 weeks and get up against it. I know the budget, the governor's talking about extending the budget periods and all that, but at some point in time, I run out of money. I agree with everything the mayor said. The one suggestion I might make, if we do have 2 groups coming in, one group can be outside. They don't have to be in here so we can get the work
Well,
done.
yeah.
The thing is, I just think we should go ahead until we see that it's not making sense because of other things happening outside. I would like to.
Councilor Bob.
So I agree with the issue about this likely is gonna ramp up. And it's gonna be more difficult in 2 weeks to do some of this. I'm not real hot on the idea of all these one-off meeting after meeting after meeting and kind of doing this again. I like the idea, I mean, I would like the idea of structuring this some way so we can get most of it done in a day or night, an evening or whatever. You know, I mean, seriously, I don't know if we need to have these 2-hour meetings on all of this.
I had a suggestion for Robert today. We could do it on a Saturday. We could make it a working day.
Right.
From 9 to 6, and we kind of stagger.
I would
right
much
through.
prefer something like that.
Yeah.
And the other piece that and this goes to the governor's proclamation, we have to have some way for the public to see this in real time. Now,
So just, if you can stick a pin, so there's a new,
camera,
right, over there. That camera is the town's camera, and there, Scott was in here today trying to set up live streaming. Scott, right? Right,
Charlotte,
right. So there's a thing that's needed, and he's gonna get that thing so that that can live stream. It's also gonna live stream to YouTube. What I did send something out to see if we can get people to call in, or if we can get an email just for people to send in their answers, their questions. But we are looking into that, and I think one of the provisions, if we do have meetings as such, it does have to be recorded. With the possibility of live stream, that would be great. And we do have someone who's able to operate, that's now the town's equipment.
no, I mean, that's all, I mean, I think, and I like the suggestion, as I said, I like the suggestion of doing sort of a one and done. At least doing that, and the sooner we do it, then we get the tape out, and then we have lots of time for people to give us feedback, because there's gonna have to be other meetings where we figure out what to do.
Yes.
Do we really need to have that many meetings? I mean, I would think maybe the new council members need to be briefed on department concerns. But the rest of us certainly have heard it. And the drivers in this budget are not the departments. They are not sending enormous amounts of increases to us coming from NDC, Board of Ed, things like that, and not from our police department or public works and so on. So I don't know how relevant the department information really is, but I know about the police new system, but other than that,
So I would beg to differ, because I think it's important, because the way that I've looked at the budget, everything needs to be cut, but that's me personally. Chief?
I think it defeats the purpose. I think if you're gonna bring everybody into one room,
one time,
that's,
yeah.
No,
that's
not one room.
contrary to everything we're talking about. You know, unless the group is small enough and the room is big enough that you can create significant distance. And that would be either a meeting with the doors closed to the public at social and youth services. We have a large room that you can
At the
sit
police
a
station.
dozen people, but they're 10 to 12 feet apart.
Yeah.
Because I think inviting any presenter in there, especially a town employee, is gonna trigger a lot of concerns from them. We're giving the message to department heads that they should be separating their employees by 8 to 10 feet when they come in tomorrow, and that they should not have the public in. And if we have a meeting in a closed room like this, with as many people as we're having now, next week, I think that's contrary to everything we're talking about.
Right,
A
so,
meeting of this size tonight should be the last meeting we have of this size
So can we
group.
do this by video?
Yeah, I think remote meetings is a good concept, you know, and we're setting up WebEx to do that. And I think that's one solution for those who can log in. That's how our policy meeting and our planning section meeting is gonna be held tomorrow, is gonna be remotely, so that not everybody is coming together. And we're looking, every hour today, we were looking at better ways to diversify or spread out our workforce so that we can limit that. So that's just my 2 cents.
so then would it be possible that if the council got into a room, right, because it's,
So, so this is a group of 12, and you're saying this is too small for a room like this.
It is.
So a bigger room,
Yeah, I would
Or
hold this,
auditorium.
I would hold after tonight, I would hold a group size meeting like this, either at senior services or at the police department in that amphitheater room that you could spread people out.
So if we had if we did senior services and had the council and, you know, the clerk and the finance director and the manager,
I
and
think
had the
if
president in a room there, and had with a screen, and had the presenters present on screen to them, so they wouldn't be coming into the room.
I think I would like to run that by Amy Kraus from the health department, but I think that might be a reasonable solution.
so.
And certainly making sure that people are self-screening, that anybody who doesn't feel good doesn't participate.
Okay, so, Deputy Mayor, so if we're not at the place where the technology would adhere to that, the presenter being on screen as of yet. What are how many additional people per meeting can we accommodate?
If I can jump in really quick, the policy group meeting is tomorrow night, right? Not tonight.
The planning section meeting is tomorrow at 1. We don't have a follow-up policy meeting.
So there's not a policy group meeting
We
tonight?
talked about having a meeting right now at 6:30, a conference call with Mark, I believe, to discuss the next steps after
I just wanna make sure I have.
the declaration of state of emergency.
The software, the WebEx software, we have the ability to invite you to participate in a meeting, and you can respond to that and through your web browser beyond that meeting. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that council members actually have to be in that room. You could be in another location, we could screen share with you, we could.
No, I'm familiar with, but I wasn't sure if the town is prepared, say tomorrow, for that.
We just got WebEx today, I'm beta testing right now.
And I know it's really simple for you to connect up into with your phone or whatever you have.
So,
But, you know, and I guess, how many additional people would be in the room?
My
besides-
understanding is this software, because we got it.
Oh, I'm head count, number of persons, head count,
Without software.
without the software, I'm sorry.
Oh, I don't know, but I think I have an unlimited.
Well, you're
thing.
definitely not going over 50.
10,
No, that's what I meant,
10,
but
and maybe one.
12, so and I know we're limited, but with those, with the presenters and,
town hall?
Yeah.
Oh, staff, you mean, how many more staff?
correct.
Well, if you decide that you don't wanna do that all at one time, we could probably stagger staff so that you had no more than an additional 5 staff or so,
Okay.
at any given moment.
In a larger room, chief, would that be doable?
I mean, I'd have to run it by the health district just to get their opinion, but, you know, I mean, in following what the recommendations have been so far from Bloomfield, or West Hartford Bloomfield Health District, it is what we've seen so far in the media, 6 to 10 feet separating people. So if you're gonna have a dozen people, then you're gonna need 120 square feet, right? Something, or, no, 1,200 square feet.
This is an item for the planning group to discuss tomorrow, because we've got a list of meetings that we have to create or have, and whether or not we do them all at once, which sounds like if this is such a hassle, maybe we should do them, figure out a way we're gonna do it and do it all in one day, so it's complicated. But obviously, the WebEx is not up and running, so tomorrow night, budget meeting doesn't sound like it's gonna happen. Or does it?
I agree with that.
And so the planning group probably wants to get into this a little bit.
The WebEx is ready to go, in fact, I've got a meeting
Oh, so
scheduled for
what?
6:30 and we're late.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was under the impression
Oh,
it
is that a
was
test?
wasn't ready.
Yeah, we're
Right.
using it now.
Can I just say something?
Well, yes.
So,
We're ready.
Oh,
yes,
sorry.
Francis was waiting over here.
Yeah, just going back to Joe's point, I guess I'm a new guy here, and I'm a little confused why we keep having these budget meetings, because I feel that we've done the CIP meeting, we've already done the meetings with all these people, kind of just hitting the highlights. I mean, I don't need an in-depth description as to why we're talking about 2 people of Public Works or 3 people of Public Works and 1 person here and 1 person there. I've heard it all before. I don't need to go over it again and again and again. I mean, personally, I've been through the material a little bit. I'm ready to get into a room and hammer it out if you wanna do that. I don't need to hear why we need the CIPs again, why we need this again, why we need that again. I get it.
Yeah, I guess it's just a pattern that's been followed for many years, so that's something to discuss. Madam Mayor, the question that come up is, WebEx may be available and ready for use tomorrow. We haven't determined that we're gonna have a budget hearing yet tomorrow, or how it's gonna be set up, or where it goes.
Who's presenting tomorrow?
Tomorrow is,
Revenue expenditure.
We have the council
manager
meeting.
and capital improvement.
Capital.
But, so, yeah, obviously, if we're gonna fold it into one day, which is
Yeah.
been proposed, or 2 days, or you can put a bunch of these together and work out an arrangement by which we can do it appropriately and as easily as possible, in the right room.
So, I think the thought of having the departments present their budget, I think is them also reiterating the need, is what I think. I like the idea of being able to, whether it's the council in one room and whomever else on a screen, a Zoom, a WebEx, or whatever, I'm okay. I think that's responsible. I think the process is also important. If we're gonna do it in one day and we go back to back to back to limit the amount of people in the room, that's a decision that can also be made. I would want us to follow the process of having the departments talk about their needs, because once again, just going through the budget, I see some places that we can just take a scissor and say we're gonna cut 10% off of every department or 17% off every department. We can, and have that discussion amongst ourselves, we can. But I think if you hear from them, they may have a better understanding as why the numbers are the way they are, realizing that they're probably not gonna get all they need to get. But just one situation, when we were talking about the other day about DPW, right? There was two positions that were gone for like the last 50 years, and the town manager said that I would rather have this position over that position. Maybe they can have that discussion if we had to cut something out of their budget. So that's my only thing.
Question, also brought to the chief's attention that they're having a planning meeting tomorrow. Maybe that's something that they ought to go over, with the health director there, to see. And we need to come up with a plan how we're gonna do these meetings, and we shouldn't, you know, it should be a few people trying to work out those logistics, not all of us. It'll never get resolved. So I was suggesting if that's
So
something.
I mean, the planning meeting that I'm having is how we address public concerns over this crisis. The
That's not
intention
what
was
they
not
do.
to schedule the budget
Right,
meetings.
we've gotta figure that out.
I don't have
amongst
the
ourselves.
personnel to take that on.
Right, we gotta figure that out
Okay.
amongst ourselves.
Go ahead, Marcia.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Madam Mayor, so here's what I would like to suggest. I mean, on one hand, I like the idea of doing it all in one day. On the other hand, I think it's a lot because we're supposed to be distancing. That means we're spending an entire day in the
With a lot of
same room with a
people.
lot of people. So we're going against the protocol. So, I mean, the thing is, the town meeting is not until May. That means we have the
an
whole
extra
month of April. Now, assuming, I don't know if things are gonna get worse, but can't we
Spread
reduce the meetings and spread them out and have one per week over the next 4 weeks? Instead of doing 2 a week, we just do 1 a week, and we have extra time in April because we don't have, we only have canceled deliberations scheduled on the 7th.
Second and
Seventh, if
yeah,
needed.
second day, yeah.
So why couldn't we?
So I'm with that too, because here's the thing, I am being as respectful as I can. We do have some counselors who are at that golden limit.
We have
That-
soul folks?
Well, and I can also say that we do have some counselors that are immunocompromised. So I like the idea of separating as much as possible, but I also like the idea of going through the process. Counselor Curtin and then Counselor.
Can I just, first thing, we have an extra month because the governor did give an
Right.
extension.
We got an
So
extension.
it's
Yeah.
not May anymore, it's June
Oh.
per se. So we do have an extra month, that's the
Okay.
first thing.
Good.
So my whole thing is, I like the idea of the public being engaged in this process. To me, that's important. So my whole thing is, spend the next 2 weeks, hunker down, reviewing the budget, coming up with notes. And if we set a timeline for that, then we could share our notes together and start kind of figuring out if we're on the same page. And that's a firm place to be when you come into these meetings, so it should just be quick and easy. You shouldn't go through, you know, listen, I don't want to be out in public, I'll tell you guys plain. I'd make a decision to isolate myself from everyone. I have 2 young kids and whatever, so we're gonna work from home, we're gonna stay away from the public, so I don't need to be out here. I have a budget book, we all have a budget book, we can go through that, make our own notes, and then we can compare it in the next couple of weeks. But we have until June, we have an extra month, so we have time.
Kevin, and then Francis, and then David.
So, sort of 2 comments on this. First of all, I largely agree with Francis. I mean, we've gone through this process 2 years. And I'm actually anxious every year for the process to change. It started to change this year somewhat with the manager having the sort of ramp up meetings where we see stuff first. I'm not too hot on spending huge amounts of time with the departments, but I'm very happy to see it again. I think we need to figure out whether this is going to be possible by WebEx and whether we have to be live. Because I'm happy to do all this at home, sitting in front of my computer and hearing those presentations and asking some questions. But I'm also extremely concerned, however we do this now, that we have to have ways to get feedback from the public. I mean, the public is essential to this whole thing. I was very disappointed with the Board of Education meeting last week.
But I
Because none of the public showed up, basically.
I think if we did WebEx, however, that shuts the public down.
Well, no, but I think we do WebEx, the fact that people, if we record it, they can see those conversations, then we can come back with some hopefully with
Chief,
some.
I don't think WebEx
It
works
doesn't
that
work
way.
that way, I use it.
I'm sorry,
I
I
don't
was
think, I don't
answering
think
your
WebEx
question.
works that way, that we can record on WebEx.
You can
There is.
record on that.
There's a record function, but as the town manager said, we're familiarizing ourselves with those functions today. So over the next few days, working with IT, I think we may be able to flesh some of those things out.
Okay.
It does record whatever's being displayed on the screen as well as all the conversation. And then at the end, when you end the recording, you get an email with your recording. That email could then be, or the file could be put out onto the
But I
share,
agree,
or the,
I agree, that's just a preliminary, in terms of the public seeing these meetings, they can watch them. But then we have to have, I mean, there's gonna have to be discussion, as I said, I was disappointed.
how do we get the feedback?
Well, yeah, how do we ultimately get feedback, and how do we have, I mean, then depending on how this goes.
Well, I imagine you could ultimately set up a talk group on there amongst just the council and the town manager to do that.
Yeah, but
how
let's
does
get
the
the public.
How does the public engage?
They have to have WebEx as well. It depends
not-
on how you send out.
Well, that
how
wouldn't
do
be
you
for
send
these
the
meetings.
file? If you, the video recording, that's created specifically in WebEx. It's
So they would have to
viewable
have
in WebEx.
WebEx as well.
So it depends on how,
I don't know the
whether it's
answer
a
to that.
purchase or.
They would have to
free
download the program.
What have you.
I
So-
imagine that we're not the only community
Right.
struggling with these questions.
Yeah,
So
I
I-
don't think we're.
I didn't think that, something that for us to look at, Francis, go ahead.
Just very excited about Rickford's comment. I think take 2 weeks. Let's dive individually into these books. Let's come back and sit down and kind of say, okay, maybe we can come to a consensus really quickly. Not really.
It's not
That
gonna
might be,
happen, darling.
that may be, but I mean, but maybe we all have at least some things in common that say, okay, we can move on from this. We
So-
can,
So
and then,
you're suggesting that we don't have the presentations?
to be honest with you, I really don't need to go through it again. I've seen it, I understand it. I think bludgeoning me over the head with more of it is just it's not gonna give me any different feeling of understanding.
So can I just stick a pen and get the town managers weigh in on this?
I would like to be able to reschedule at least what's scheduled to happen this week. We
What-
are.
So wait a minute, I'm not even talking about the schedule. I'm talking about the fact of having individual departments present.
Oh.
That's what I'm talking about.
The only
Pretty
reason
good
why
presentation.
we are bringing individual departments to you is if you have specific questions about those projects or expenses in those departments where you may need more information before you make a decision on them.
Okay.
So, yeah, to follow up on that, because that's part of my thought too, is that traditionally, we've had these dog and pony shows from every department. These visual things that we don't need that. If we're gonna be spending two weeks on the document, we'll have them here for questions. Have them, and if they have reason to, that, I think that's a better way, a faster way. As far as the comment that Councilman Curtin made, I'm scared to wait till June with this extension, because I think this could go longer. And if it goes longer, we'll never have a budget, and I don't know what you do then. So I would try and do as much as we can, when we can,
We operate
and
under
worry about the
this
rest of it
budget,
later.
right?
Remember we had the same issue with the state
Yeah.
a few years ago?
Yeah,
We
when's
operate under
when's
this
Exactly,
budget.
so if things get really bad, we're all gonna have to function under the
I'd rather
existing
be ahead of
budget.
that curve.
Yeah, so my suggestion, like I said before, I'd rather see how much we can get done, because by this time next week, I'm sure we're gonna be at a different place. However, it's all a vote. So,
Wait.
is there a motion on the floor?
Oh, we're acting on item, the second item, given the financial.
Oh, no, we're,
Tabled that.
no, we were,
Okay.
we tabled that, we're
Okay,
down to,
tabled.
we're down to number
We're
5,
looking at what we're gonna do with the budget meetings,
Right.
and then we gotta come back to the public.
right. So is there a motion on the floor?
I would make a motion, why don't we take, today's what, Monday? Why don't we take, in Mr. Perkins', advice, and maybe schedule something for next Thursday to come back together, if we don't wanna push it out 2 weeks. That gives us 10 days maybe, get into the books, come together, see where we're at. At that point, we can put together a list of maybe of initial first round of questions that we have for each department. And then at that point, we can maybe have them address those questions as a group, or like in an email format. We don't have to have them come in and present. And then at that point, we'll be able to have the information we need to address those items on the budget. That's a long
I'll second that.
motion.
And then
Any discussion?
Yeah, Carrie can start, we're figuring out exactly where we want the mill rate to be, we can start playing around with stuff like that. We could also, when we meet on that Thursday, we can start to get ahead of the curve to say, okay, realistically, where would we like to be? And then I think at that point, we can start,
I think that's,
Yeah.
and that's a good spot. I think that's a jumping off point. Where do we want to be, how much are we going to spend, and then how do we spend it?
Yeah.
I would like if you would consider also adding to that during this next week, that the administration examine ways that the public can be involved, and so that when we get
Good
together,
point.
we've
Yeah.
got something at that point, we can put it through.
The other thought I had before was, if we do a WebEx and we do a video or something like that, we could also, before anything happens with that, we could put it out on the web, and then for a week, and then come back, and then get email feedback and telephone feedback, and I'm sure all kinds of feedback, coming back towards us.
Is there, I know, I saw that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So, is there, any other, yes? Yes.
I think in the past, it's been extremely useful to some point, not too far down the stream, to say, we think, we'd like to know what a 2% tax increase budget might look like, and ask the town manager to come up with his recommendations to make that happen, or maybe alternately a 30%.
So, that's what Rick just said that Carrie's gonna do in the meantime.
But, so, see what things he thinks are.
Yep, that's what Carrie's gonna do. We're trying not to raise any taxes, Carrie, please keep that in mind, no taxes.
I remember that.
Yes, Councilman Calhoun.
So, is it possible for those of us that have kind of started going through the budget book, or between now and the next meeting, if we have specific questions for departments, to send those to the town manager, and they could possibly be addressed?
get feedback on it, yeah, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I was impressed today being on that. I've been on a lot of conference calls before, hearing kids in the background, all that stuff. But being on this conference call today with Larson, I think we could replicate something like that if we figure out what kind of conference call they used. Because basically, you had folks calling around the state, calling into him. And basically, you had it on mute. And if you wanted to get in to get a question, you press *3, and then it basically took you to someone. You kind of go into a queue. You go into a queue, and then you question. We could have something like that in Bloomfield, where if we're sitting, bring it up, if we're sitting down, and it will be the same. It will be similar to that. Well, I've been on a conference call. This was a little different because you couldn't hear anyone else.
Right,
Basically,
so-
everyone was kind of on mute.
So even the call with the
Yeah. No, this is-
governor today, that's how they did it.
Well, I'm just
Okay.
suggesting we could do something like that.
Okay, so are we at the place,
Yeah.
are we at the place where we're going to take a motion that we're going to suspend our budget meetings? We're going to take some time to go through the book and come up with questions, and then Carrie has some specifics that she's gonna look through for us, and then at some point in time, we're gonna get back together.
Well, I think
the,
we said
it's
the
come back.
26th.
So here, once again, here's what hear me clearly. I believe that we're going to be at a different place next week than we are today.
Mhm.
So it's quite possible that the 27th will not be a date. Now, most people have been closing for 2 weeks. Some of them are at the end of March. CDC says we're gonna be probably jacked up for the next 8 weeks. So if we want to dial it back out and say maybe, hopefully, by the 31st, that's the end of March. April 2nd is the next Thursday after the end of March. It's the first Thursday in April. So I don't know if we want to be realistic enough to kind of push it out that far.
Wait, can't this be, I mean, supposedly, a week from Thursday,
Or we're gonna WebEx it.
we could do it by WebEx. I don't see any
That's
reason we'd have to
up and
do it
So if
personally.
WebEx is up and running,
Yeah, I mean, all this is contingent, all this is
Yeah.
contingent.
Except for the public, we'd have to see.
Well,
if they
but,
could-
no, but we wouldn't make budget decisions until they.
Until they come on.
okay, so then the motion would be to push this out till next Thursday with the hopes of doing a WebEx meeting. That's your motion?
That is my motion.
And find, and the manager will figure out a way to the public.
There's a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, now, Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to recommend that we cancel the town council meeting on March 23rd unless we have some priority business to conduct on that date. I would say cancel it.
And actually, can we just add to that, canceling these two on the books budget meetings, because they're that wasn't included in your
Canceling the
motion.
17th and the 19th.
Yeah, that wasn't included.
I just want to add to that, I think we also have to think about all the boards and commissions.
Oh, yeah.
That's another thing, so I think we could also add to that.
Yeah.
We're
So
canceling.
are we canceling, subcommittee meetings for the month of April? Are you, March, is that a friendly amendment? Is that a new
No, that's
amendment?
Patrick,
That's
that's
a
Patrick.
new-
That's a
I
new
think it's-
amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well,
It's,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
guess
this is different.
It's all meetings,
It's
right?
all meetings.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So those, subcommittee meetings for the month of March is also canceled.
All those boards
Yes.
and commissions.
The golf
Yes.
committee on March 23rd.
Yes,
Cancel
but everything's canceled.
Because the council do have oversight over.
What happened? What happened?
No, but I canceled it in February.
Yeah.
Well, the only budget meetings that we canceled are for this week, because hopefully next week we'll be able to do the budget meeting.
Next Tuesday, next Thursday.
So tomorrow and Thursday, and then Tuesday, and then hopefully by Thursday, we can start over with WebEx.
26th.
What departments do you guys want there so that we
So,
can?
I think what's gonna happen is, we're gonna hunker down for 2 weeks, and we're gonna come up with our own questions. If we have questions ready before, they will go to the town manager. If not, throughout that discussion on WebEx on the 27th, when questions arise, we will funnel those questions out, and then the departments are gonna email us back the answers. And then we're gonna try to do that back and forth until we get the all clear in June, when we can meet again.
It should go to, it should
June of
go,
2021.
I don't think I'm
Unless I'm
going to,
dead.
it
Mike.
should go to both the town manager and Carrie, I think.
Right.
It's the best, yeah.
Right. And if it, I mean, at this point, if you can share the question with everybody, that'd be great, because then we're not asking the same questions. So just send it to everybody.
All boards and commissions for, just for the month of March now.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody's seen this, as a remark from the state epidemiologist. Mark Pazniokas reported about it in the Connecticut Mirror. He says that between 350 and 700,000 people in Connecticut will be infected in the next month or two.
700,000, that's
Seven-
a quarter of the state.
That's,
Yes.
But that's
Yeah,
why
talk about Italy, but it
It's
doesn't
just
mean
gonna,
anything.
it's just gonna get worse. That's what
He
everyone.
told us the other
that's what
day
everyone
that
said.
between 20 and 30% of the state population will be
Well,
infected
yeah.
in 6 weeks.
That's twenty.
So just, I think we just need to keep that in mind. However, don't be fearful, right? Be prepared, not fearful. I know
Should we be
that
fearful?
West Hartford is using as a hashtag flatten the curve, because that's what all the social distancing is doing. So if you're on social media, hashtag Bloomfield flatten the curve, that'd be great. I don't know if we can get signs, you know, those,
Just a clarification on
Same
the
with-
governor's order, it came through a few minutes ago.
yeah, I was trying to read it too.
It does limit religious gatherings to no more than 50.
That was signed in exec, see,
Yep.
that's gonna make your job a lot easier, chief.
All religious,
Because you're going
spiritual,
in.
all religious, spiritual, or worship gatherings of such size are prohibited in the state of Connecticut.
Makes your job easier. I'm supporting you from
That's
outside. across
that's
the
an
street.
interesting constitutional question.
So, can I go back to the signs? I was looking for the signs that tell you if there's a detour. Do we have those,
Detour signs?
what are they, what are they called? Traffic signs. Do we have we have traffic signs that has messages on them, right?
You're like a reading board, like
Oh,
what's
like
Yeah.
Digital board?
mobile
Right,
traffic signs? I don't
right.
know if Public Works might have them, the
Do we
police
have,
department
do we
doesn't
have
have them.
those?
Well, we gotta find what we're messaging first.
I think we're talking about social distancing so that we can flatten the curve. That's it. I
There's gonna be
think,
on sandwich boards and numbers on them.
Some
We can
place.
start with the two we have.
right.
in town.
Bloomfield is, asking you to help flatten the curve.
I can
Social
certainly talk
distancing.
about that. We have a communications
that.
group as part of the incident command
So
model.
if you could, do
So
something,
I'll
that'd
Captain
be great.
Hydash discuss that with Dave Malesko, the captain, and Abby are on that.
That'd be great, and why I say that hashtag, because that's the hashtag that West Hartford's using.
There has to be one of those boards, because there was one down here on Park Avenue for the parade, saying the
Okay.
parade's coming, da-da-da-da.
Oh,
So they have
yeah,
to be
we have
someplace.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, and then yeah, and then yeah.
I just have a question for Robert. I know we're closing out the town hall, and I'm more interested about cleaning. Like, what kind of plan you have in place to just kind of take this opportunity to disinfect the town hall and stuff?
I know Public Works is doing some research into a contractor to see if there are people that do cleaning that goes beyond what we're able to do and what we're trained to produce. I don't know that we need that though, and so, we've already talked about changing our cleaning protocols and the materials that we're using. This building here probably won't go through a deep clean. It'll probably be whatever DPW, is being provided, to combat the virus. So, I don't know exactly which chemicals Chris is getting, but we will go through a heightened protocol.
So I know you met with Dr. Thompson. What are the schools doing? I know they're cleaning. What are they doing?
I believe that they have a contractor coming in, but I don't know that for a fact. I know that they're cleaning,
That's much different.
and they're sanitizing, I mean, they're going through it.
But that's where you'll
So people come in and out.
Well, there's also the notion that after X number of days, the virus isn't there anymore. And so, you know, I'm hoping that by distancing and continual cleaning, we wind up with an environment that's not gonna be as infectious as a school one.
So,
We have not gotten advisement from the health district that we should be sanitizing town hall.
so just a question for, back to where we were, and I forgot the name, what is the name of the group, the command group on this, you guys?
It is, so the policy,
Policy?
so there's a whole incident
Several
command
groups.
group,
No, no, yeah,
this is
well,
the
what-
policy group.
The policy group, the question came up before, that we have the mayor and deputy mayor, who are democratic officials, should there be minority should there be a minority representation?
So to my knowledge, no, I will double check that with the town attorney.
Well, but I mean, who sets this up? We set it up? Or
I
is it-
set it up.
You set it up, so
The
you.
policy, the
Sorry,
policy,
Okay, that's fine.
the policy group is meant to drive our overall
So you
reaction
set this?
to the emergency.
Okay.
So it's
not
not meant to be a
political.
combination of political bodies, but more of a direct action group.
That's fine, I
We-
just wondered where this
Yeah,
came from.
we set it up as a unified command so that we took all positions into consideration before enacting a policy.
Excellent, thank you. So another, one of the things that we just talked about was town hall closing. So town hall is gonna be shut down, to the
For
public,
visitors, for visitors.
to the public.
To the public.
So I know that, other towns have shut down for 2 days. Hartford was 2 days, West Hartford was 2 days, Windsor was 2 days. I know the town manager is requesting 3 days. He's requesting Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Does anybody have any questions, concerns regarding that?
To clean the building?
I wanna-
No, he wants, town hall will be shut down so that the town staff can come up with a plan going forward on how they're going to interact with the public.
Oh, gotcha.
Listen, I want you to read this.
Oh,
You
sorry.
can't say the name, but I
Sorry.
actually just received
Okay.
a text from a town employee, so if you can read
Oh.
it yourself. Yeah.
Just a suggestion, the town hall building needs to be cleaned and sanitized thoroughly. And this is coming from a employee.
Read the whole thing.
The janitor does a horrible job keeping the building, do you see what I, do you see?
I mean,
Because it's being
it's funny that just came
does a
through.
horrible
like,
job
I kid you
keeping the
not.
building clean and sanitized. Also, what about the staff being in contact with each other? If the proposal is to close the building, staff can still be at risk from each other.
That came through at 5:40.
From radio staff members. Anyway, so I think all of that needs to be taken into consideration.
Because if they're tough,
So is there a reason we're leaving the town hall, we're leaving it open tomorrow simply because we haven't announced this as a plan?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance. I've talked to the department heads to tell them that I was coming to talk to you about closing town hall to the public so that we would have a brief moment to figure out how we're going to operate over the next 8 to 12 weeks. I don't believe that I can make arrangements with a contractor and have them come in and sanitize town hall tomorrow. The people that are doing all that are pretty busy at the moment with other folks. So we are doing the best that we can with what we have in terms of staff. We certainly could do more. We would need a little more time to plan ahead, but yeah, we are not as sophisticated or as deeply staffed as other communities in our area.
Well, all I'm going with was this whole Wednesday through Friday. Is there some reason we're open tomorrow? I mean, is there some reason?
The only reason that I said that is I haven't gotten in front of staff to say that we're going to close. And I didn't want to show up tomorrow and tell everyone to go home.
Well, no, but you're not telling them to go home anyway. It's not staff. You're just closing it to visitors, so I mean.
I don't have a way to communicate with the public to give them advance warning, other
Yeah,
than
but-
just showing up and saying,
Right.
we're closed.
I think it's a different message. West Hartford is closing town hall completely,
Period.
except for department heads for 2
For
days.
2 days.
And then essential staff is coming back,
Okay.
and they're gonna continue it closed to the public, is what their public message says.
I don't know if personally, at this point, I don't think I don't feel like that's something I need to micromanage. We gave emergency powers to the manager and the chief, and you guys figure it out, you know?
Okay, any other questions, concerns, comments?
Comment?
Oh.
Comment? Yeah, I noticed in the governor's, there's some explanation. There's a lot of things that goes on in the town hall that is really critical in terms of timing. Whether it's a bill of sale, title or something like that. There are ways that were listed in that description that you can sign them and hold them over. They're making concessions, in other words. There's ways of
So your time
dealing
limit
with
is
it. So
wrong.
when you get together tomorrow with your town clerk staff and all that, and assessors and whatever, see how, that there is some room for some fudging time spent so that we can get the public back in here to do it.
We're also working on the logistics of how do you provide a drop box for people to drop things off so that they don't physically have to come in the building, but you're getting the materials. We're working through that. There's just lots of questions in terms of process.
Motion to go.
Question, concerns, comments? Joe, did you have something to say?
I was, well, actually I didn't, but
That's Rick Burke's fault, that's Rick Burke's fault.
Joe.
Rick's Burke's fault.
All the town manager really needs to do is put a sign on the door, that's what people are
Well,
doing,
that's what
saying,
he-
we are
it's just-
closed to the public.
So let him do it.
That does
One
it.
of, yeah, so,
And I think they can call in or
right,
deal with it
so
whether they
there's
want.
gonna be, because, Steve Good just texted me, there will be an article about all the town halls that are closing, so it will be a part of whatever article he's writing, that our town hall will be closed to the public Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then Chief is going to massage or have somebody massage the article that I wrote so that we can get it into the messenger and on the website.
Have we authorized the town manager to send any employees home that he thinks he should?
So the town manager will let us know if he needs to do that, but tonight we're gonna go home.
Hold on a second, I don't think the town manager needs to.
Yeah, I've already-
No, but I mean, he's gonna send them home and let us know.
I've already.
I don't know. That's, yeah.
Just so you guys know, the insurance industry wrote us to let us know how many town halls have closed. And as of this morning, 33 have closed.
So, Kevin,
Closed
ahead.
Motion to
outside.
adjourn.
is there a second?
Post outside.
All in favor?
Aye.
All, yeah, motion carries.
Actually, when you said go home though, you meant a specific employee, you're not talking about all of them.
He could choose to send all.
No, he could, but then
Well,
we have to
I
figure out how to
think
pay
he just
them
needs,
and all
yeah,
that.
he just needs to let us know.
No,
That's
yeah.
what he's doing.
Well, yeah, because I'll go.
I had a phone call.
How many of our employees work?
Yes.
Or the president.
Pastor Sean.
No, I was gonna say, Andre, because he makes phone calls.
Yeah. Chief,
How many of those are gonna be in the next 2 weeks?
Yes?
can I see you?
People like Marguerite.
No, like some of the
Tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, last time was not.
Yeah.
Surprising
Yes.
at how much will go. I mean, you think about this, all this work, I mean, this stuff is healthcare business, so that's, you know.
Oh, well.
Seems like a vote from your doctor or something.
When's their deadline?
Sometimes I think the less we do, the better.
Probably turn that off.
Is this on?
Yeah, it's being recorded.
Oh, is that what you just said, Joe? Yeah. I think that's, I'll say it again.
Right, so I think Mark was
Sometimes it's better.
saying
Francis,
to take it back.
receive before you go. So I will.
Tomorrow morning and get it over to
We just talked with Pierre and
Right.
You
could actually do a test with
exchange it back.
I'll get one of those.
And
We'll
WebEx, you
post
could like
it on the
connect
website,
up,
and we'll send
because you
it.
do those,
You can send it, you can send it
disseminate
to
information
Messenger.
You've
for
got
the
it.
town council. So you can set up
print
a
it up so
WebEx
that we
and
can
then
deliver it to,
send
I want
to
to
town
hand
council at
deliver
this
it to them
time.
with
Yeah,
a
you want to
Just
make
as a
sure
test.
everybody's
executive order
okay.
attached to it, saying
I just,
we don't have a
fired
choice.
up the meeting.
I just,
Because enforcement of it is involved.
right,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go
Yeah,
ask
that's exactly what we have.
Reverend Dale or anybody else.
I will leave
I
town.
wanna see if I can cast it up there, I'm just curious.
And give the time you need to make.
Use
need
the
to make
larger
arrangements.
screens.
And they have enough time to be able to do that, because tomorrow's Wednesday. So I know Rehoboth has that
So what
call
are we
now.
meeting, are we meeting again now, or are we
Are
all
we-
set?
Robert, I mean, yeah,
I'm trying to get it, cranked up, I've let, everyone know that you guys should have received an email with a dial-in number just now, if you wanna do it now.
well, we're right here.
This is just Mark, right?
And Amy,
I got a headache, it's a headache,
I know, huh? I've had a headache for 2
Is
weeks.
the symptom sheet?
It is that I have it.
Okay. Yeah.
We all got
I've
that.
had it for 9 years.
Uh-oh.
I'm kidding.
I could probably say about 3.
Why, how old is your youngest child?
That's how long I've been with the town of Bloomfield.
Oh, wait, you know what?
Oh, can you
yeah,
turn that out?
Oh my God. You're gonna have to redact some of that towards the end.
Well, the meeting was over, so anything